Hey guys, this is Miss Young. We're going to be taking notes over Manifest Destiny. We can also refer to this as westward expansion. It's just simply the different chunks of land that we obtain over the years to create the entire United States. Who we got it from, how much we paid for it, what treaty it may have been obtained under, was there a war, just basically the who, what, when, where, and the why of each acquisition. And again, acquisition means to acquire, to become ours. Let's get started. All right, so we're going to start out with the beginning, all right, the original United States of 1800s before we started adding on different chunks. So we have this chunk of land, all right, it is that Northwest Territory, what says unorganized territory, we called it Northwest Territory. And then we also have the original 13 states. Together, that chunk made up the United States. All right, same area. Just now it's all blended together into one. This was won after the American Revolution and we signed the Treaty of Paris 1783. Okay, so you got to go back to Bundle 2, the end of the American Revolution, when we are officially considered the United States of America. Where is from the Mississippi River to the East Coast, which is the Atlantic Ocean. And why? Because we won the American Revolution and signed the Treaty of Paris of 1783. Write everything you see, move on when you're ready. All right, our next land acquisition is Louisiana Purchase. We've already talked about it, but we're going to go ahead and make sure we have notes on it. We bought it from France. It was under the presidency of Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, because of his ideas, many Americans believed that it was our destiny to expand its frontiers to the Pacific Ocean. It's kind of this mindset that it didn't matter what we were going to have to do, we wanted to get all the way to the Pacific Ocean. We paid $15 million for it. That's about 3 cents an acre. France completely got ripped off. This is in 1803. It's from the Mississippi over all the way to the Rocky Mountains. So we have our river here, and the Rocky Mountains run right about right here. So that's the chunk we're talking about. It literally doubled the size of the United States. We gained control of the Mississippi River and the Port of New Orleans at this point. Again, this is prior to the War of 1812, so we controlled it. But as you recall, during the War of 1812, we almost lost it. But we're very fortunate that Andrew Jackson stepped up and took that for us, took it back. Something else you probably should know is that Thomas Jefferson obtained this without congressional permission. Remember, we have 3 branches of government, and they must all be on the same page, or at least 2 of the 3 for something to happen. And he did not wait for permission from Congress to be able to obtain Louisiana Purchase. And ironically, him being a former anti-federalist and at this point a Democratic Republican, they believed in strictly abiding by the Constitution as it word for word, as opposed to the Federalists who were like, you can loosely translate what the Constitution is saying. We don't have to be super strict. Not Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson believed in being strict about it, and then ironically went and made this purchase without completing the correct governmental process in order to do so. So he was frowned upon for doing that, but the American people were pleased because, like I said, we believe that it was our destiny to expand its frontiers to the Pacific Ocean. Write everything you see, move on when you're done. All right, our next land acquisition, which again we've already discussed, we're going to take notes on it anyways, is the Florida Cession. Florida Cession was bought from Spain. Again, this is all thanks to the doings of Andrew Jackson going down there and basically telling them we're going to take it from them. We did pay them $5 million and agreed to pay off their debt. That is Spain. We agreed to pay off the Spanish debt. This is in 1819. It is the state of Florida today, and we got it when we signed the Adam-Onis Treaty. Write everything you see and move on when you're ready. All right, our next land acquisition is Texas annexation. Annexation is a rather large word, but since you spent your entire 7th grade year discussing Texas history, I won't get into it. This is between Mexico and America. Santa Anna was the dictator of Mexico at the time, and as you know, tensions grew between the Americans that were settling in this Mexican territory, and the Americans were not willing to follow basically the rules that the Mexican government was trying to implement, such as you got to be converted to Roman Catholic, you have to submit any documentation in Spanish, you must be considered, you must apply to become a Mexican citizen, things like that, that were being forced upon the Americans, and they refused. And it eventually, tensions grew large enough to where you had things like the Battle of San Jacinto, remember the Alamo, and in 1836 we gained our independence, and Texas became its own country for a few years. In 1845 is when Texas then was annexed into the United States, and we call it the annexation of Texas. Again, this is in the Texas-Mexico area. And then the reason was because Americans moved to Texas. Santa Anna attacked, we captured him, we win, and now we have Texas. All right, so originally it was its own country, and then in 1845 it was annexed or absorbed into the United States. I believe this was under the presidency of James Polk, so that might be important as well. Write everything you see, move on when you're ready. All right, our next acquisition is the Oregon Territory. Now, this is between Great Britain and America. However, it was a peaceful compromise. We agreed to have joint control of the territory. And in 1846, Britain officially hands it over. They do decide that we get the chunk that is below this line right here, that border, and everything above here, as you know, is Canada. And Britain controlled Canada for a very, very long time. So everything below that in this green, in the green section inside that red circle, that is what we obtained. Hashtag goals, because we finally get to the Pacific Ocean. That was a big deal. Remember, back talking about the Louisiana Purchase under Thomas Jefferson, the people felt like we were destined to reach the Pacific Ocean. And here we go. We met our goal of reaching the Pacific Ocean once we finally obtained this Oregon country. Again, it was peaceful. Okay, this is actually a teak. You need to be able to know some of the peaceful compromises that were made, and this is one of them. Again, the location is the northwest corner of America. Why? Why did we want it? Had very good land, good climate. Yeah, it may be cold during the winter, but it's got good growing season. Okay, write everything you see. Move on when you're ready. All right, our final land acquisition is the Mexican Cession. Once again, it's between Mexico and America. It kind of comes off the tail end of that Texas annexation dispute. What ends up happening basically is there's a little scuffle somewhere in this region, and we used it as an opportunity to go to war because, like I said, we believe it is our destiny to move west, to obtain more land. That's that manifest destiny. It does solve the issue of slavery versus free states under what you will later know as the Compromise of 1850, because California is eventually admitted as a free state and kind of joins the North in their efforts to get rid of or abolish slavery. The consequence, however, of this land acquisition is that the country does become divided over whether we should be extending slavery into these new acquisitions. We've already talked about some ways that we are divided as a country at this point. Remember, the North feels like they have a right to have high tariffs because, well, it's going to benefit their companies. The South feels like they have a right to implement low tariffs because it's going to maintain good relationships. That economic divide there, and now we have slavery coming into the equation, which is going to continue to bring on more and more controversy and eventually lead us up to Bundle 7 with the Civil War. The location here is just these states of California, Nevada, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. We paid Mexico $15 million once we signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And if you recall, you should have already learned this, I think in 7th grade, that there was a discovery of gold in California, and you had what you call the gold rush. And so that particular find really led to an increase in the population in California. On a side note, you do have a group of, a religious group called the Mormons, who are eventually travel to Utah. That's that very square looking shape you see here, this state. These Mormons travel to Utah seeking religious freedom. And if you think back, every religious group we've ever talked about have always left where they were to go get religious freedom. And this group is no different, just happens to be in the country itself. So write everything you see, move on when you're done. All right, I told you that was our last land acquisition. I guess I lied. This is our final land acquisition. This is the Gadsden Purchase. Really simple. This is, again, between Mexico and America, but Mexico got smart. Notice we pay $10 million for a very small piece of land, whereas the Mexican cession, look how huge of a chunk that is, and we paid $15 for it. So Mexico got smart, charged us $10 million. This is in 1853. The reason we wanted this was because it allowed us to trade easier, because it gave us an opportunity to put our railroad system in the south. And if we could just get this little last chunk of land, our railroad system could travel through that and really help connect our east coast to our west coast with a railroad. Again, this is the southwest part of the U.S. It's just south of the Mexican cession, and it is a final piece of our puzzle, with the exception of Alaska and Hawaii, which didn't happen until the 1900s anyways. So this is all that you'll have to know for westward expansion. Write everything you see, move on when you're ready. All right, a little bit of art and literature during this time period. Believe it or not, this is a teak, and you do gotta know it. So some artists and writers of the 1800s. You had Thomas Cole was a painter. Here's some of his paintings. Notice how he's really painting the landscape. That was a big deal. Here's a person or people. I think this is another person. Look how small they are. They are not the focal point of his paintings. His paintings are about the landscape. You have authors such as Nathaniel Hawthorne writing The Scarlet Letter. You have John James Audubon, who is famous for his birds. Sometimes people even question if these birds existed. Did he really see these birds, or is he just painting from his imagination? And these people would paint and wrote about the beauty of the West. Okay, westward expansion. As you move west, you're starting to learn more about the different type of land you see, the different animals that are in these parts of the country, and the beauty of the land and nature. During the 1800s, started as a school in New York City that's along our east coast. It was called the Hudson River School, and they wanted to paint and write about nature and land in the West as they traveled westward. They wanted to show everybody what they were seeing. And the reason for this is because they romanticized the West, making landscape the center of their painting. Romanticize just means you just imagine it and how beautiful it is and how wonderful it is, and making people want to go there. So write everything you see and move on when you're ready. All right, so now you have a map on your notes. You are going to need to write everything you see. I promise you're going to need it. So let's start with draw a little dotted line, because we need to identify that we have the original 13 colonies. Go ahead and draw you another dotted line and label it the Northwest Territory. But overall, these two chunks of land are the United States, 1800s, thanks to the Treaty of Paris of 1783 after the American Revolution. Next is the Louisiana Purchase from France for $15 million under Thomas Jefferson. 1819. Florida Purchase, bought it from Spain for $5 million under the Adam-Moniz Treaty. Texas annexation of 1845. Texas joins the U.S. after being their own country for 9 years. Next acquisition was 1846, Oregon Territory, a peaceful agreement between U.S. and Britain, and we finally reached the Pacific Ocean. That's the super important part, is we finally reached the Pacific Ocean with this Oregon Territory. Mexican cession of 1848, got it from Mexico for $15 million after the U.S.-Mexican War. signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And last but not least, 1853, the Gadsden Purchase got it for $10 million from Mexico for our Southern Railroad. So pause if you need to. Write all this down and move on to the next slide when you're done. All right, so you're going to glue your notes down to page 73 of your notebook along the spiral edge. Make sure you put glue right along that spiral edge, okay, so you can still see the both sides. No sense in writing notes and then covering it up, so glue right there. And listen for instruction when you're done. Edge. Oops, went too far.